Welcome everybody to Mary Giuliani Live. I am really excited about tonight's show since it's going to be a Mary's favorite book review show, and I'm reviewing the book Lost Connections, The Real Cause of Depression and Some Really Unexpected Solutions. So stay tuned. I'm just going to make a couple of announcements and we're going to get right to the book review. And for those of you that are new, I would encourage you to make comments, ask questions. Let's make this a conversation. That's the whole purpose of the show. So for the new people that are here, welcome to Mary Giuliani Live. This is a talk show that I started about a year and 3 months ago because I love being in the conversation of transformation, and I wanted to share some really wonderful books and authors and thought leaders that can help you transform your life. And the reason I love doing this is because that's what helped me transform my life 30 years ago when I started on my personal and spiritual growth path. So if you would like to know the upcoming guests, make sure you get on my email list. All you need to do is go up to marygiuliani.net, and there's a Get Show Updates tab, and make sure you just put your name and email in, and you'll get an email once every 2 weeks letting you know who's coming up, and also links for the previous shows so that if you can't make the show live, you can check out the replay. Also, I have an iTunes channel, so make sure you get over to iTunes and look up Mary Giuliani Live, and you can subscribe to my show and have it automatically downloaded into your iPhone. So again, be sure and participate, because this is just me and you guys and this book that I just was so blown away by that I just had to do a show on it. So here we go. So Johann Hari is the author of this book called Lost Connections, Uncovering the Real Cause of Depression and the Unexpected Solutions. So I had heard about Johann Hari. He's like a journalist, and he wrote another book called Chasing the Scream, the Beginning and the War of the End of Drugs. I'm not sure if I got that exactly right, but it was an amazing book on just what's gone on around drugs and addiction all the way back from like the prohibition alcohol days and everything. So it was such a riveting book that when I heard about this book, I thought, oh my God, I've got to read it. And of course, my personal story I can relate to because I've been on antidepressants for 20 years because of my own anxiety. And so, of course, I was really interested in reading this. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I learned and also invite you to join us. I just need to refresh my Facebook page here. Oh, good. I'm live. Yay. So anyway, let's see. The first thing I just wanted to start with is that he basically he travels the world and interviews and does all this research on really what the deal is with depression and anxiety. Even though the title of the book it says anxiety, depression, he really talks about anxiety as well. And they many times go together in terms of diagnosis and that sort of thing. So anyway, so he starts the book off by just sharing his own story, and he's been on antidepressants since he was like 16. And so he really wanted to get to the bottom of it. Is depression really a chemical imbalance, which is the typical sort of philosophy in the medical and the mental health community? And if it's not, what is causing it? And, you know, what can we do to change and grow and learn and have great lives? So he starts off by, the first part of the book is about the crack in the old story. So the old story, again, has been, you know, you go to the doctor or your general practitioner and you say, you know, I'm really depressed or I'm really anxious. And sometimes they'll refer to you to a psychiatrist and they can evaluate you for something. And sometimes they'll just prescribe prescriptions for you. By the way, who else is? Oh, Rachel's here. Hey, Rachel, good to see you. So the deal is well, and just to back up a little bit, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but actually 20% of all adults in the United States are on some form of antidepressant. And again, I've been on them for 20 years. I have no judgment about it. I'm just, as a my own personal mission and wanting to understand mental health and how to have a great life, it's of course of interest to me. So anyway, so he starts, you know, really doing some research on what is the deal with depression and anxiety? So he starts doing this research on the pharmaceuticals and the how they got different antidepressants approved, and he comes, you know, no surprise in a sense, but just so you guys know, what I found out is, first of all, the trials that the FDA requires for a drug to be approved have to have a lot of research behind them, and Big Pharma actually funds the research, so there's a little bit of a conflict there if you think about it. Well, what he found was through the Freedom of Information Act is that these trials, like out of 200 trials for one particular drug, for example, they were able to, the pharmaceutical company was able to cherry pick the top 20 trials that showed the best efficacy and submit them for approval to the FDA, and that's how they get their drugs approved. And the reason why Johann Hari found out about this is because due to the Freedom of Information Act, he was able to pull all the trials, and again, out of 200 trials, which showed really no major efficacy, there was just 20 that had shown enough to get the drug approved. And so, you know, the point he makes is, well, how many people would have gotten better? You know, obviously we all go through tough times, and it's not unusual. I think it's actually a pretty high percentage that most people will suffer from some type of anxiety in their lifetime. Rachel, nice to see you too. Anyway, but the point he's making is, are these drugs really helping us, or is there something else going on? So that's the first part of the book, which was really, really interesting. And then, you know, so we go to our doctor when we're feeling depressed or anxious or whatever, and instead of really asking us about maybe what's going on in our lives, many of them are so busy, they just want to make sure that you walk out with a prescription. And so that's why 25% of us are on these meds. And there's a lot of, let's face it, there's a lot of side effects. And so that's the first part of the book, and that was eye-opening enough. So he goes into, first of all, sort of debunking the efficacy of meds. And again, I just want to put this out there. When I got on meds 20 years ago, it was like a lifesaver for me because I was so anxious and so, like literally, I would wake up practically every morning and just kind of ruminate on what could possibly go wrong in my life, to be honest with you. And so for me, getting the diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder and dysthymia was a relief, because it was like, okay, it's not my fault, it's just a chemical imbalance. And so I got on Effexor, and within a few weeks I felt much better. So it really did help me in the short term. But the issue that we're going to talk about here is that the doctor really didn't get into what was going on in my life or what had happened in my life from the time I was a child that could account for some of this anxiety and depression. So let's see, what else? So then he goes into basically debunking, like I said, for me, and like he talked about too, when you first go in and you get on these meds, typically you will feel a little bit better or a lot better right away, but then it starts taking more to get the same result. So, and that happened for me. I started at 40 milligrams, and then it was 75, and then it was 100, and I ended up on like 300. And thank God, I mean, I didn't have major side effects, believe it or not, but still, many people do. And hi, Maylin, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. And Tanya, so glad you're here. Welcome. And by the way, for those of you that are watching, feel free to make comments or questions. This is really a discussion show, so I just want to, put it out there. Okay, so then he goes into, let me just kind of set the stage for what he really discovered is that our brains are not broken, and that's what we're told. We're basically told that we have a problem with our brain, and we're not born with depression or anxiety. And really what he goes into in the book is that these are symptoms of a bigger issue of how we're living our lives, and this isn't about blaming the victim or the person that's suffering. It's about the whole cultural way that we're trained to live in this society. So anyway, so what he goes into, he like I said, he goes all over the world and starts really digging into this. And so the first thing he found, that the reason why people get depressed is because they have a disconnection from meaningful work. And the bottom line is, we as humans need to feel like we make a difference. And part about, and excuse me if I kind of look away a little bit here because I have a lot of notes that I want to make sure I cover. So anyway, he make sure I can see everybody's comments and stuff here too. So he talks about meaningful work. 87% of people are disengaged from their work, and that's a lot. I mean, if you think about it, if most of us spend more than 40 hours a week at work, and if 87% of us are disengaged, that's really sad, actually. And I used to be one of them, and so I can totally relate to it. And we're going to get into maybe some of the reasons why we tolerate this kind of disengagement. And he talks about the reason why is because, one, they feel a lack of control over what they do. In other words, they don't have autonomy in terms of choosing the kinds of things that they do with their job or their work. And then there's the other piece is that there's a lack of feedback that they make a difference. A lot of companies don't really give their employees or their staff much feedback on how much they're contributing. So those are the main things about the disconnection from work. And also the reason 87% of people are disconnected from their work, which is what makes them depressed and anxious, by the way, is because another reason around work is that they feel that the balance between their efforts and rewards are not, like in other words, they're putting a lot more in than they're getting back. So those are some of the pieces that he covered around the disconnection from meaning and work. Cynthia Erickson, so good to see you. Robin Zeiger, so good to see you too. Welcome, and feel free to make comments or questions or anything. That's what this show is about. It's a discussion show with just me and you guys. Okay, maybe we could pretend like we're all sort of like in my living room and we're just kind of talking about this topic. That's the kind of my intention about the show. So that was one of the reasons why people get depressed and anxious. They're feeling disconnected from their work. And again, that was me many years ago, and I'll get into how I resolved that in the past few years. The second reason he found, the second reason he found that made people depressed and anxious are their sense of disconnection from other people. And I think this is the biggest one, actually. Loneliness produces cortisol, and cortisol is what makes us super stressed. And so being lonely is actually worse than being a smoker, believe it or not. Hey, Susan Price, glad you're here. And so disconnection from other people is a really big deal. And get this, here's some stats on this. Actually, loneliness produces cortisol and it makes us so stressed to where it's as bad as being punched by a stranger. I mean, that's pretty radical if you think about it. Hey, Susan, good to see you. The other thing is that lonely people are 3 times more likely to get sick and die. And studies show that loneliness is causing depression and anxiety. And what he talks about is we need our tribes, you guys. We need each other. And even though this technology that we have is enabling us to even have this show, unfortunately, there's a dynamic going on in our culture where we think that this is enough, and it's not. We do need in-person tribes of people that we can feel connected to, that we can feel loved for and by, and that we can feel safe and protected by. And, we've evolved as tribes for millions and millions of years. And so when we feel alone, of course we're going to be anxious. Let's face it, we're human animals, and we need our tribe to feel safe. So so that's the other really key piece, is the reason why there's so much depression and anxiety is we're disconnected from other people. And in fact, what he mentioned, and this is really amazing, is that out of the people that were, the studies show when they ask people, how many people can you go to when you're really in distress or upset about something or really going through a tough time? And it's actually less than one. I know that sounds kind of weird, but just from a statistical standpoint, even if, so in other words, many people have not even one person that they can reach out to when they're going through an illness or depression or anxiety. And again, we need our tribes, we need people. And the thing about our culture is that we think that it should be, if we have enough Facebook friends, well, let's face it, our Facebook friends aren't the people we're going to call. I mean, some of them are, but most of them are not the people we're going to call when we're really having a tough time. So we really do need to put our energy into developing these kinds of relationships if we want to be happy and if we want to make sure that we don't have to suffer with depression and anxiety. The other thing is, like for me, for example, I was in a relationship for 8.5 years, and I think many women can relate to this, is that the path of least resistance is to watch TV on the couch with your partner instead of getting out and making friends or maintaining friendships. And so for me, I didn't put as much energy as I would need to keep those friendships going. And of course, friendships do fall away, people move away, people have different things going on. And I found myself after my relationship ended with really not many friends. I mean, and there's shame that comes along with feeling like you don't have a lot of friends, and so you don't really want to talk about it. But the truth is that most people don't have enough friends, and there's nothing wrong with you if you don't have enough friends. It's just that you need to understand that it's a human need to have people, and we're talking about in-person friends here. We're not talking about, I have some really good friends that are like my friend Carrie up in Washington and my friend Jess who's in Guatemala. And even though those are really good friends, I also need my in-person tribe of people I can call up and say, hey, let's go grab coffee, let's grab dinner, let's go for a walk. I'm really sad, I'm really in a shame spiral, or whatever it is. And so I can feel that kind of support and give that kind of support. So again, we get depressed if we don't have the kind of connection from other people. What else? He goes into saying that, oh, here's another piece. A one-way relationship cannot cure loneliness. And what we mean by a one-way relationship is, this is even like with your therapist. Even though therapy is great, and I've been in therapy many times, that's a one-way relationship. That's not where you are paying to be in that relationship. And there's, again, nothing wrong with it, but it's not the kind of relationships that's going to cure your loneliness. And then there's other types of one-way relationships, like maybe people that just aren't as giving and kind or available as you are. And so, this is an opportunity to look at your relationships and find out, just ask yourself, out of all the people that I actually spend time in person with, how many of these relationships do I feel like a sense of love and connection and protection and cared for, and that I also feel that for that person? And you want to have, at least 2 or more, just in case the one person's whatever, out of the country or whatever, like I said, we need each other. Okay, so that's the second key. So the first key was disconnection from meaningful work, which causes depression and anxiety. Second key is disconnection from other people. Oh, I did want to cover, I forgot to mention, yes, Susan, I agree. Narcissistic relationships are a one-way relationship. If you're in relationship with anybody with a personality disorder or that has a lot of wounding, sometimes it's very difficult for that to be a two-way relationship. So, and the other, I think, important thing to mention is it doesn't mean we need to kick people out of our lives. And it's okay if we do, if they're toxic for us. But what I think is even better is to include more people that can be in a two-way relationship. The other thing he talks about is kind of going back to the job thing. Why do we stay in jobs we hate? Well, he talks about that we're hypnotized by our culture to believe we need the status of the income and what it produces to be loved. I'm going to say that again. We are hypnotized by our culture to believe we need this job we hate for the status of having a good job, and for this or good job, and the status of the income it produces. And it's a lie. The bottom line is, this is what our culture hypnotizes us into believing, and unfortunately most people have bought into it. Let's see. What else? So also in terms of being in meaningful relationships, you each need to be sharing something with others that is meaningful to both of you. You have to be in it together. It can be anything that has meaning and value. You have mutuality, caring, a mutual caring relationship. Yes. Internet, social media, and gaming, and this is another key piece here. Hey, Monica P., so glad you joined, and Colleen, yay, so glad you guys are here. So I think a lot of us, we get the sense that maybe we're connected because of internet, social media, gaming, texting. And the reason is, from a brain science standpoint, every time we get a like from something we post, we get a dopamine hit, and it feels good for a moment. So it scratches the itch, but it never, ever satisfies our deep need for belonging and connection to people. And that's why people end up getting addicted to some of these internet texting and social media types of sites, because it's like that saying, you can never get enough of something that almost works but really doesn't, because you're going there to feel connection, but it can never really make you feel connected. Okay, so what else? Well, and here's another really key piece he talks about. The online world offers people what they crave that has vanished from their environment, such as a goal that matters to you. And that's for people that are gamers. Gaming, online gaming, gives you a goal that matters to you. A status of feeling valued and respected. Having people like what you post on Facebook can give you a sense of feeling valued and respected, even though it's an online sort of simulated value and respect. I hate to say that, but it's not the same as having a relationship with somebody in person. And a tribe. So the internet gives us a sense of a tribe. With gaming, for example, many games you're part of a team where you earn your status on the team. It makes you feel like a team player, like you're in a tribe where you matter, and you're rewarded by the challenges in the community, and you have much more control than in the real world. So interesting stuff, isn't it? So he talks about the internet has come along offering a parody of what we have all been longing for decades, a sense of connection to each other, Facebook friends instead of neighbors, video games instead of meaningful work, status updates instead of status in the world. And so that's what's going on. And I mean, I don't know if you guys can relate to this or not, but that's why you can never get enough of online stuff. You really do have to do the old-fashioned in-person relationships if you want to have a sense of connection and love and support, mutual support. Let's see. And he also talks about how social media can't compensate for what we've lost, which is a social life. Because we really do have to belong to an in-person tribe. Well, and I love some of the analogies he talks about, how just like a bee will go haywire if she loses connection to her hive, a person will go haywire if they lose connection to their tribe or their group. And so if you're depressed or anxious, it's because it can be because you've lost connection to your tribe. And that's who we are as a human being, as a human animal, we need that. And so it's such a powerful book. I just loved it. Yes, and Susan Price says people are getting further away from themselves and finding a community with the gaming and Facebook as well, and Snapchat, yep. And that's why nobody is connected. I wouldn't say nobody is connected, because I actually have put in a lot of energy into develop in-person relationships. Hey, Andy Fetzner, it's so good to see you online. Thank you for joining us. Yes, the tribe analogy is so key. Okay, so then that's the second thing. So we covered work, disconnection from work. We covered disconnection from other people, and these are the reasons people get depressed and anxious. It's not a chemical imbalance, but we're going to cover the brain chemistry of it in a minute, but it's not the cause of it. The other piece is, where is it? Oh, disconnection from meaningful values. This is really key. Basically, what he talks about is that our culture has perpetuated this myth that external gaining status and external objects, as Terence McKenna calls it, object fetishes. We've been sold a bill of goods, basically, that if we can achieve more, and if we can be one up from whoever's in our life and have a higher status, that we're going to be happy. And the truth is that it's a lie. We need in-person connection. We need meaningful work where we know we make a difference. The status and the stuff, yes, I'm not going to say we don't need, obviously we need income, we need to pay the rent, the mortgage, that sort of thing. But studies have shown that after you make a certain amount of money, no additional money is going to make you any happier, because money can only do what money does. It just buys you stuff to take care of your basic needs, and then all the other stuff is for things that aren't really going to make you any happier. So the point here is that we need to focus on intrinsic values versus extrinsic goals, and versus extrinsic values or extrinsic goals. So intrinsic values are about doing things because you just love doing them. And so, for example, this show is exactly what that is. I do this show because I love to be in the conversation of transformation, and everybody that knows me as their friend knows that's, if you're going to be around Mary, you're going to be talking about personal growth. She can't help it. That's just who she is, right? So I love doing this, and so that's why I do this show. It's an intrinsic value of mine. An extrinsic value would be, I want to have a net worth of $10 million, and I want to have a beach with a ocean view and a private, 1 acre plot of land. And again, there's nothing morally wrong with any of those things. They won't scratch the itch of what we need as humans. That's all it is. So there's nothing wrong with those goals. It's just, if you think that they're going to make you happy, it's an illusion. Andy says it makes us adults feel like we have control. Oh wait, so let me say what Andy said first. There's intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, and we train children to look for extrinsic rewards. Absolutely. Yeah, and it makes us adults feel like we have control. Very interesting. Good point. That's the therapist in the room tonight. So thank you, Andy, for sharing that insight. And study after study show that focusing on extrinsic status and goals has a much higher depression and anxiety. So, and I used to be that way. I bought into it. And I was all over financial independence. I was all into real estate investing. I was all into just extrinsic, I bought into it. And I burned out, and I had my spiritual wake-up call, and now I'm doing my thing here. So, hey, Barbara Conley, thanks for joining us. Okay. So, and also the studies show that intrinsic goal seekers do experience more satisfaction and happiness. And get this, extrinsic goal seekers do not experience any increase in day-to-day happiness, like zero. So, it's a myth. So the whole culture brainwashes us to chase extrinsic goals, get the right grades, get the best paying job, rise up the ladder, display your earnings through clothes and cars. The problem is this cultural hypnosis into pursuing extreme goals is a lie, and it doesn't work. So I think I've kind of getting a little redundant on this, but so the point is that we need a path to a satisfying life, and we're going to get into that. So I'm kind of going over the ways we're disconnected right now. Oh, just one last thing he talks about on these extrinsic values. Materialism is KFC for the soul. Okay. Let's see. Then the next one is, where is it? Disconnection from childhood trauma. And I've been doing a lot of work on this particular topic recently, because I just found out 6 months ago that a lot of the struggles that I've been dealing with for 50 plus years in my life were a result of having developmental trauma, which is, and the reason why it never got uncovered before is because I think part of it is that my abuse was not sexual or physical; it was emotional neglect and a lot of shaming and humiliation kind of stuff, and being raised in a very dysfunctional alcoholic home. And so it put my brain on hyper alert and caused me and that's what caused a lot of anxiety for me. The thing that is really important to look at is there some childhood trauma that you may be experiencing anxiety or depression over? And to find out if you do have childhood trauma, where you can go is, well, on my website I have the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey that you can take a look at, and it gives you an idea of how many. Just go to my website and you'll see it. It's called ACEs Survey, and it has a lot of information about whether you've experienced trauma or not and what kind of support you can get to overcome it. Anyway, very, very important piece. And a lot of us, when we're raised in crazy homes, feel like it was our fault that we had. Like for me, I started using food to cope with my anxiety when I was 5 years old. And as I grew up, I thought there was something wrong with me, like I was weak and a loser because I couldn't control those impulses. But I later found out that childhood trauma actually changes your brain. When you're a young child, your brain is developing, and when you're in a toxic stress environment of the kind of home like I was raised in, your brain, the part of your brain that has helps you with impulse control, does not develop properly. And it's not permanent. You know, I've been in a lot of great treatment to get my brain rewired, and it's been amazing. But the point is, I thought all along my impulse control around food was my fault, and there was something wrong and bad about me, and it never was. It was never true. It was never my fault. So if you've ever struggled with any kind of impulse control or addictions or anything like that, it's very highly likely it's due to some unresolved childhood trauma. And like I said, the trauma doesn't have to be physical or sexual, and or if it is, you know, whatever kind of trauma it is, you deserve to get the support you need. And go to my website and to the ACEs survey, and you can find out more about that. Oh, Susan Price, I found out the same thing 2 years ago. Wow. Yeah, I totally get it, Susan. I mean, it's mind-blowing to really get that your brain and your psyche and your body can be so impacted by these young childhood experiences. The good news is that there are so many effective treatments, and I just, like I said, found out 6 months ago, and I am like light years ahead of where I was. And given I have done 30 years of personal growth work, but it wasn't trauma-based work, and it's very different. I'm working on rewiring my brain. I'm working on releasing the trauma in my body. So anyway, a whole other topic there. But so that's another reason we can be depressed and anxious. Disconnection from childhood trauma. The other thing is disconnection from status and equality and respect. Oh my God. Okay. I'm an out lesbian. I've been out for many, many years. And, you know, when you're raised in a culture that's homophobic, it can hurt you. It can make you feel depressed and anxious. In fact, I just posted something on Facebook today that talks about how GLBTQ youth have much, much, much higher eating disorder rates than youth that are not LGBTQ. So here I was growing up, and again, had no idea that the macroaggressions and the microaggressions for the LGBTQ community can really cause anxiety and depression. And well, it makes sense. I mean, nobody wants to feel like there's something wrong with them just for being just the way they were born to be. So the other piece, though, about disconnection from status and respect is in our jobs. That's, the whole gap between the top 1% wealthy people and the bottom lower socioeconomic of society. That causes depression. We need to feel as humans, as people, that things are fair. Hey, Teresa Ma, so good to see you. Glad you made it. So when we live in a culture where we feel like, well, for example, he talks about how in the big corporations, the CEO makes 300 times more than the average worker. Well, yeah, you're going to feel like a gap there and an inequality, and it causes anxiety and depression. Andy. So Andy has a comment. The fun part of being trauma-informed and resilience-focused is learning more about why people exhibit the qualities we deem pathological. Absolutely. Gosh, I mean, since I've been doing all this work on learning about trauma, it's so amazing how all of these personality disorders and everything seem to be based in early childhood trauma. I mean, I'm assuming that's what you're saying, right, Andy? While you're getting back to that, I'll keep going here. So, like, for example, in terms of disconnection from status, equality, and respect, the more unequal your society, the more prevalence for mental illness and depression. With the imbalance in income status, it creates a culture of high-status people as supremely important and others of no importance at all. When the status gap is too big, it creates a sense of defeat you can't escape from. You put your head down and feel humiliated, ashamed, and unworthy. And this doesn't only affect the people at the bottom. In a highly unequal society, everyone has to think about their status. Am I maintaining my position? Who's threatening it? How far can I fall? So thanks, Andy, for confirming that, yes, personality disorders are typically very much trauma-based. So that's the fifth reason why he found people suffer from depression and anxiety. Doesn't this make sense, you guys? I mean, God. Like, for example, here's another piece. Depression can be a response to the humiliation inflicts on many of us. When you watch TV, you're told the only people who count in the world are celebrities and the rich. You know your chances of attaining either one are extremely unlikely. Flip through Instagram, magazines, and your normal shaped body will feel disgusting to them. So, again, this is all cultural. Hey, Susan Lloyd, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, and feel free to make comments or questions. So, again, the inequality and the status issues, and again, these are all culturally based energies that if we don't question them, we adopt them. And that's another thing I've learned about brain science. Our brain is shaped by our environment. So if you put yourself in environments that have these kinds of values, you're going to feel shitty. I mean, let's face it. So anyway, the other piece he talks about is how 8 billionaires, get this is so disgusting, but it is what it is. 8 billionaires own more wealth than the bottom half of the human race. So, yeah. This level of depression is not a brain chemistry imbalance. It's directly related to our cultural inequality. This is not just a personal problem, but a shared problem, which is due to the way our society is set up. Okay, so that's the fifth piece of why many of us get depressed and anxious. And then the sixth reason he found was the disconnection from our bodies and the natural world. Again, we're human animals. We're smart apes. I like to say we're smart apes that think we're smarter than we are and think we're smarter than other people and have no clue as to how influenced we are by the environments we put ourselves in. But anyway, disconnection from movement, our bodies, and the natural world. So we've evolved to be moving apes for millions of years, and we need to be embodied for our endorphins to rush, to and actually he put this term out that kind of cracked me up. He goes, all humans have biophilia, which is a natural love of the landscape that humans have lived in and depended on for millennia. It's our habitat, it's our home. That's why we love to be in nature. It's where we evolved. It's where our tribes lived for millions of years. So we love it, and so we need it, and we need to move in it. That's why we love to move in nature, and if we're not doing that, we're going to feel depressed and anxious. And so with our current culture and being online all the time, that doesn't happen so much unless we make a very concerted effort. When I was a little girl growing up, what did we do to play? We'd go outside with our friends and would ride our bikes. We'd go roller skating down the street. We'd play softball or tug of war. So we were out in nature. But the kids today are not. But this is not just kids. This is adults too. So that's one of the reasons we get depressed. Let's see. Also, the seventh reason why he talks about disconnection is a disconnection from a hopeful and secure future. Depressed and anxious people are unable to contemplate the future, feeling like you have no power or control over your future and destiny. So it's like the way that the job culture and the gig culture is moving, it's like, I mean, I've seen it just in the past 5 years. You know, I've had several different gigs. I never had gigs before. I had a full-time job. But now it's like, it feels like you're auditioning for a role every month when you're trying to get a client or trying to get a gig or whatever. So that's another piece. We've moved from having stable jobs to living in a gig economy. 20% of us are in the gig economy, shifting from proletaria, secure jobs, to prisia, a shifting mass of chronically insecure people who don't know if they will have work next week or if they will even have a stable job. So that's another piece of why we get depressed and anxious. I love this book. Causes 8 and 9, and then we're going to get into the cure here. Basically, he just talks about the real role of genes and brain chemistry. They play a role in terms of when you don't get all these needs met that we just went over, your brain reacts with cortisol, and then it goes into a chemical imbalance. So the chemical imbalance is not inherently there. It's caused by your environment, and then it impacts the biology of your brain. And then if you don't correct it, it can get worse and worse. And that's where you get depression and anxiety and other mood disorders and illnesses. So his message really is, you're not broken. The culture is broken. A human actually needs to be autonomous and have two-way relationships and meaningful work and feel valued and respected and feel connected to their body and movement. This is sort of my recap here. And understand our well-being is always a combo of our biology, our psychology, and our social environments. So let's talk about what he talks about, the actual solutions. So reconnect to other people. He actually did some studies with the Amish people and how they've consciously chosen to slow down. And they don't see it as deprivation because they don't drive or take or fly because it would disconnect them from their tribe, and they'd lose connection. And you lose something when you slow down, but you gain more. The next door neighbor, community. Let's see. When you have everybody living close by, you've got people over for dinner, church, communities. There's a physical closeness and as a result, a spiritual closeness too. So you can't be everywhere, and the vehicles are online. So the point here is you need to make a conscious what I call, he actually talks about social prescribing. And so I've made a social prescription for myself, and I actually have it in my tasks to reach out to one local person every 3 days to either have a phone call, and if it seems like, like we might have the potential for a decent and good friendship, then we'll get together in person. So I am taking steps to make, to reach out to people in person. So think about that. The other thing is, as far as, where are we? Reconnection, where are we? Well, as far as meaningful work goes, asking yourself, are you really setting up your life to have meaningful work? And if you feel like you can't even consider leaving your job, you don't have to leave your job. You can actually just start looking at some options and just take baby steps. Just even taking baby steps will make you feel better, because it feels like you're moving in a direction that might be supporting you and having meaningful work. Another idea is to look at how you can have more autonomy at work, or look at how you can get your needs met in terms of feeling appreciated for the work you do. And this involves asking for what you need. And if you ask for what you need in these ways and you can't get it, or it won't get honored, then it's an opportunity to look for other things. I just know for me, what has made all the difference in the world is working layer by layer to uncover all the limiting beliefs and, well, let go of my trauma. Let me just say this about the trauma thing. My brain was so dysregulated from having this childhood trauma that it was difficult for me to really even complete creative projects, because I couldn't hold the focus. And I used to feel so frustrated. So for me, getting into fulfilling work meant that I needed to heal my traumatized brain first so that I could focus. Oh, by the way, Andy, thank you for your comment about the symptoms are appropriate for the situations we experience, and it's totally the environment and culture that needs to change. And P.S., yes, we are the environment and the culture. Alicia Ray, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. Okay, so we're talking about what the solutions are. So instead of having junk values, which are focusing on external goals, and again, we all need to earn a living to put a roof over our head. But beyond that, intrinsic goals are the things that are really going to give you the juice in life. Hey, Alicia, so glad you're here. So look at what is it that you love, and if you don't know what that is, make that the project to figure out what that is. And, watch my show. I'm all about intrinsic goals. Buy some books, go online, read this book. He goes into much more detail about all these people that he visited actually implemented all these solutions so that they have intrinsic goals. Like, for example, one bike company, all these people work for this bicycle company, and they didn't like the way the company was run. So what they did is, instead of going off and starting instead of them all just doing their own thing and getting other jobs, the team of people that they really liked at the company banded together in a company that was it's like an equal structure, there's no hierarchy, where everybody has equal input. And so they were able to recreate their work to be more meaningful, and to feel like they had more control, and to feel like they really were making the difference they want to make. So it's not like you have to, go start a business by yourself or whatever. There's all kinds of ways. So I'd highly recommend reading the book. The other thing about the connection to your body and nature. Again, we're human animals. We've evolved for millions of years in the external environment. It's our habitat, it's our home. We need to be connected to it. We need to be moving in it. We need to feel those endorphins rushing through our bodies. So, what I do is I walk every single day for 40 minutes, and I just, the first part of my walk, I just connect with nature, and I always say, good morning, plant family, and I'm really into the connection with nature, and I feel my body as I'm walking, so I really get into somatic mindfulness. That's the other piece. We get disconnected from our bodies when we're so focused on, online stuff. And because the the bottom line is we need to have the felt sense of the present moment to be really happy. And some of my buddies over at the Flow Genome Project, I love these guys, Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler. They talk about really what we all need are three things: good times with good people in good places. That's what we really need. So we really need to focus on people, novelty, places that are fun and different, and having good times and healthy times. Okay. Then the other thing is to be respected and valued by the tribe. So if you're in an environment where you're not feeling valued or respected, it's an opportunity to ask for what you need. And if you know you're not going, if you can't get it from that tribe, you need to start looking for a tribe that will give it to you. And the way I like to mention to people is, before you rock the boat of your existing tribe, get your backup tribe in place, because typically if you're in an environment where there's not a lot of respect or value for you, asking for that could cause a lot of pushback, and so you want to have your support tribe in place. The other piece is, hey JC Griffith, so glad you're here. What else? Must have a sense of a secure future. You know, this is a kind of a tricky one, right? I mean, if we're living in this gig economy, I know for me what I did when I was in the rat race and making a lot of money, I purposely saved, totally reduced my expenses to the minimum. In fact, I was renting a room, even though I was making a lot of money. I was renting a room on purpose because I wanted to save a lot of money. And so now I'm able to enjoy the savings, tapping into those savings right now, because obviously you need money, and I'm actually in the process of developing some new programs and things like that. But I actually dropped out of the regular workforce about 2 years ago, intentionally, because I wanted to really slow down, decompress, and really get clear about who I was and what I wanted. And in fact, it's been a really healing journey for me. And I disconnected from the news. I mean, one of the best things that happened with Trump getting elected was I could not emotionally handle watching my favorite anchor, Rachel Maddow. I had to break up with Rachel. But you know what? I love you, Rachel, but it caused me too much anxiety. And actually, that was November, right, of 2017. No, I guess it was. Yeah. No, I don't even know when it was, but whatever. No, it was a year 16. I started my show 2 months later. So the point is when I was focused on what was going on in the crazy world, I was so activated and stressed out, I couldn't get in touch with my passion and what I wanted. And so now I'm totally in touch with what my passion is and what I want. So I highly recommend tuning out of the noise of the culture, because culture, I hate to say this, I don't hate to say this, culture is not your friend. Culture only wants you to remain in the status quo of culture. So if you really want to have a happy life, the culture we live in is not a healthy culture. It doesn't help us really meet our emotional needs. And that's what this book really, really spoke to me, is we live in a culture that if we subscribe to the values of our culture, we're not going to get our needs met, and we're going to get depressed and anxious, and we're addicted or whatever. And we're human beings with human needs, and we need to get those needs met. And so what my recommendation is to really map out some ideas for yourself about how you can do that. Get the book. It'll blow your mind. I mean, this is just a very short piece on it. But it really touched me on a deep level, and I'm actually almost all the way off of my psych meds, and thrilled, not even having really any just very slight side effects, but after being on these for 20 years. And the reason is because I've created a life that I love. I've created a work that's meaningful for me. I've got relationships in place now that I really, really love. I didn't have those things before, and I have I move in nature every day. I feel respected by the people that are with me in my tribe. So that's why I don't need these meds anymore, because I'm actually getting my needs met. So I really want that for you. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up this book review, but please get the book. Johann, it's again, the author is Johann Hari, and the title is Lost Connections, Uncovering the Real Cause of Depression and Unexpected Solutions. So with that, I want to move on to the next part of the show. I always do a coaching tip that's based on the topic of the show. So my coaching tip for you guys, you ready? Okay. Based on what you've heard through this show, what is it that you are willing to look at? What area of your life, whether it's your friendships, your work, your moving in nature, your all the different areas we've covered, what's one action you can take that will move you in a direction of fulfillment in that area, and put it on your calendar, because if it doesn't go on the calendar, it's not going to happen. So I really want to challenge you to do that, and let me know how it goes. And then my last, I always like to mention my coaching practice. I am a life coach, and love helping women, especially in midlife, really get in touch with what their highest calling is, and share that with the world. So if you're a person that is in midlife and you feel like, you know, you want to make the difference that you've always wanted to make, but you can't seem to get the traction you need to get in getting going, I can help you. I'm doing it. I've been in, a coach for 20 plus years. I've been a business person for many years, so I have a marketing background. And so if you need some help, just go right up to marygiuliani.net and go to the coaching tab, and all the info about the coaching is right there. With that, next week. Oh, not next week. My show's every 2 weeks now. In 2 weeks, I'm so excited because it's very aligned with this topic. It's Hilary Jacobs Hendel, and she's the author of It's Not Always Depression. And she has got she's a therapist and an author, and she has a revolutionary approach to helping people work through depression, anxiety, trauma. Just really, really amazing woman. And her book is amazing. It's Not Always Depression. I'd highly recommend you read it, so that when you come to the call, it's going to be on the 28th. So I have my show every 2 weeks. So on the 28th of March at 7 p.m. PST, she will be on. And if you or someone you know is really struggling with anxiety or depression or unresolved trauma, childhood trauma, or car accident trauma, or any other kind of trauma, she can help, and she'll be available for questions during the show. So let's see what else. With that, of course, my last thing is always, what's one thing you can do to be true to yourself? Put it on your calendar and do it, and let me know how it goes. Have a great 2 weeks, everyone.